Viking 1, 1975. Construction of the Viking spacecraft was done primarily by the private company Martin Marietta, now Lockheed Martin. The team worked for 6 years to build the groundbreaking spacecraft. The Martin Marietta team developed fantastic new technologies just for the Viking mission, including innovative flight software and an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer instrument to test chemical compounds in the soil. The purpose of the Viking 1 mission had two parts. The first was to investigate Mars and to search for signs of potential alien life. The second was for the Viking 1 orbiter to take high-definition images of Mars and to study the Martian atmosphere and planet's surface. The planned mission was 90 sols. One sol was approximately equal to 24 hours, 39 minutes and 35 seconds Earth time, or one Martian day. The mission ended up spanning over 6 years before the mission ended on the 11th of November 1982, giving 2,642 days of launch to last contact to the lander, over 20 times as long as expected. The launch of the Viking 1 lander on the 20th of August 1975 at 9:22 p.m. Coordinated Universal Time at Complex 41 Cape Canaveral was the start of the first successful lander/rover mission to the red planet Mars. The following 334 days of interplanetary travel ended with a 5-day period before orbit intersection, allowing images of Mars to be returned to Earth. The Viking 1 orbiter was put into Mars orbit on the 19th of June 1976, and later landed on the planet on the 10th of July 1976, after finding a suitable landing area. The mission came down to the last 7 minutes of landing. In those crucial 7 minutes, the spacecraft would have to slow down from 14,400 km per hour, or about 40 football fields per second, to 0, and about 160 km to make a soft landing. The landing had to be done autonomously, as communications between Earth and the Viking 1 orbiter took about 14 minutes. Viking 1 landed on Mars on the 20th of July 1976, 11:53 and 6 seconds, at Chryse Planitia, 22.27 degrees north, 312.05 degrees east. The landing of Viking 1 required a supersonic parachute that would decrease the speed by about 90%, but at that speed you would still be going much too fast. At about 2 kilometers above the Martian surface, the Viking 1 short-range radar would tell onboard computers to separate from the back shell of the parachute. After separation, the Viking 1 lander would deploy rockets slowing the descent until there would be a 2.5 meter a second landing. The Viking 1 lander had two ways of sending information back to Earth: a relay link up to the orbiter and a direct Earth link. The orbiter had an S-band transmitter, 2,000 to 16,000 bps, dependent on the distance between Earth and Mars. The lander could transmit at 16,000 bps to the orbiter. The information capacity between the relay link was about 10 times higher than the direct Earth link. The lander had many sensors on board, including 2 facsimile cameras, 3 analysis sensors for metabolism, growth or photosynthesis sensors, an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, pressure, temperature and wind velocity sensors, a magnet on a sampler observed by the cameras, 3-axis seismometer, and various engineering sensors. These various sensors allowed many streams of data to be broadcast back to Earth, and allowed the first close-up images of the Martian surface, the first being an image of the lander's landing pad and the rocks surrounding it. In the coming years, Viking 1 lander served as a weather station for the planet and took photographs of the planet's 2 moons, Deimos and Phobos. The Viking 1 orbiter mapped areas of Mars and analyzed various large expanses of the planet. The lander on the surface of Mars continued to look for signs of life with different experiments, but to no avail. On the 17th of August 1980, the Viking 1 orbiter shut down after a depletion of altitude control fuel, and the Viking 1 lander followed 2 years later on the 13th of November 1982 from a human error during a software update, causing the lander's antenna to go down, terminating power and communications. The end cost of the project costed roughly $5 billion. The Viking 1 lander was renamed the Much Memorial Station in memory of Dr. Thomas A. Much, former Viking lander imaging team leader and former associate administrator of NASA's Office of Space Science and Applications. Dr. Much disappeared during an attempt to climb Nankun Peak in the Himalayas in September 1980.
Well, the main thing we learned is there's no life on Mars. At least I think we've proven that. We had a weather system on Mars that lasted approximately 7 years after we landed on Mars, and got continuous records of temperature and pressure and clouds and things like that on the surface.